Okay, now we have installed Altium. We've drawn some schematic stuff, talked about properties for printing from our schematic sheet. Let's talk a little bit about libraries and components, because we'll find out as we go. There's a bunch of common parts, but there's going to be some libraries that you may want to download and install. Now, I told you early on to download the ECE library, and there was a big download called the Altium library that was zipped, had all kind of folders in it from all different manufacturers. Just because we downloaded them doesn't mean that they are installed and available. So let's look at the installation procedure and see what we have to do. Now, under components, which is where the libraries are going to be, it used to be called libraries, now they call it components. I have a tab here. I can first look here and see which libraries do I have. Well, I have a lot of libraries open here because I've been using a lot of different projects and a lot of different parts. But I want to walk through what we have to do to install a library. So I'm going to click this box with the three little bars and select File-Based Library Preference. Now you can see there's Project on this tab, Installed, and Search Path. We're going to click Installed, and I'm going to tell it I want to install a library. So here's a project I was working on. I can look at this and say, all right, yeah, I want to install these libraries. I want to install the schematic library and the PCB library. The schematic library is going to give me my schematic symbols. The PCB library is going to give me footprints. I know we haven't talked about that yet, but that's what the part physically looks like once it's on your PCB. Always remember that I could have a resistor, tiny surface mount resistor this big, or I could have a gigantic resistor this big. The schematic symbol's the same, the footprint's different. So let's tell it to install these. There we go. Now I can see them installed there. I'll tell it close. And if I come to my libraries here, I can look down here and say, show me the schematic library. What's in that schematic library? I can see all my parts. This is what was inside of that library. Now the ECE library, which you'll use a lot in Design 1 and probably in Design 2 also, has a lot of parts in it and a lot of parts that we use in the courses here. You'll see like the LM386, that's the little low voltage audio amp that you'll use in Design 1 or have used. Here's some voltage regulators, FETs that we use. You'll find all these parts in here. There's the Raspberry Pi Pico. Right, I mean, if I double clicked on that thing, I could place the Pico on this project. I don't want it on this one, but you see how easy it is. So that's the ins and outs on installing libraries. If you can't find a part, you can make a part, and we'll have a video later on making schematic parts and making footprint parts, but it's pretty simple. Often you can go online and find the parts and download libraries and generate the library and stick it in your Altium project. After you've made your project, you can generate a library. Another thing to think about. In this case, right now I just have a few parts, but I could come up here and say make an integrated library. Click on that. You'll see that the process cranks out, and if I now look at my project, let's see, oops, not quite done yet. I'll have an integrated library available that was generated by the software looking at these parts. Now, because I haven't put any parts on the circuit board yet, it's not going to generate, integrated library is not going to generate footprints because there aren't any yet. We'll do that later. I'll show you in a following video what happens when I have all the parts on the PCB and I want to generate a library. All right, that's good for now. I want you to look at your software and go to your components tab and install some libraries. I would install the ECE libraries so you have access to those parts.